I am honored to share with you what I've learned over the past 8 years working with the most innovative universities on implementing student success, innovation, and change, especially to serve low-income first-generation students of color. So what I'm going to share with you today is what I've learned, so that you don't have to. And my request is sift through what you find, use what you can, ignore what's not useful to you. Okay? So the first thing that you should know is that while you just heard a tiny bit about my background, and that is not inaccurate, the part that really matters, just like the rest of you, I bring my perspective to this work. And it's important to note what that is, which is I grew up in poverty in rural Montana and was one of those very unlikely students to make it through college. I had terrible advice. The only conversation about college was when my dad would make jokes that if I wanted to go, that I should win a state championship in wrestling like my brother, which was totally not helpful for a 13-year-old girl. So, I managed to navigate my path and find a way to get to college, but it wasn't great. And by the time I got there, I had this perspective of that a lot of our students have that we need to recognize. And that is, I was taught to respect my elders. People who work in higher education, in this pillar of society, students look up and they see us as the adults. They see not adult learners as well, but like they expect that people who work at universities, you're the smart people. We have the fancy titles, we have doctorates. And so one would naturally assume that when you're spending a lot of money on something, that people would be keeping an eye out, that they would make sure you get what you pay for. And so I thought that. I followed the choose your own adventure map I was handed. When I received a letter telling me how much money to take out in student loans, I said, okay, $5,000, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. But I thought the smart people are telling me what to do, and so I'm going to do it. And so I navigated and I tried to find my way, but I wasn't given the direction like, when do you meet with an academic advisor? How do you reconcile a financial aid hold? How do you know if you're really on course or off course? I didn't go to office hours because that sounded like when people did office work. And so there's a lot of coded language that is creating barriers for our students. And a lot of our process really doesn't center their needs. So in the end, I make it through, but it took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree, 7. And when I did complete, I had 50 extra credits I didn't need that didn't transfer and $50,000 in student loans. And this is the best case scenario for a lot of students because we fail half of all students who walk through our door. And the reason I share this story is that it underscores a dirty secret that we need to talk about if we're going to do innovation work, if we're going to actually adapt and evolve. And that is that higher education was actually never designed around students. And this fact sometimes can be uncomfortable for folks, but if you see it for what it is, which is the recognition, this is a design problem. This is not about motivation. This is not about intention. No one is setting booby traps, twisting their mustache in an ivory tower. This is just, we never had the time to work on our design. Originally, universities in the United States were designed around the faculty because that was the intellectual capital we had at first. And over time, though, our systems are much more designed around what we're being asked to do. That report for the state board. Now we're really got to focus on ROI and efficiency. Okay, long-term career outcomes, research, rankings, all these things. And so when you get a new request at an institution, as you know, you don't get the time to think, well, I got to go first interview students and figure out how this is going to affect them or what their experience is. We just don't have that. And we need to talk about that because the biggest impediment to innovation, just to cut through it, and I don't like to bury the lead, it is how you spend your time. It is your phone, it is your calendar, it is your inbox. It is the terrible meetings without an agenda. It is not giving us ourselves the time to ideate and brainstorm. And so I want to talk to you about how we can be strategic with those resources we have. But the first thing you need to recognize is that it was never designed around students, and everything you see as a result is really about that. So it's a design problem, which means we can design our way out of it. And I think it's super important that we do that. And we start by making sure that the experience of design is crafted around purpose, inspiration, and community. because the thing that is missing in COVID, where we're thinking it's this burnout, the great resignation we think is about people needing a vacation. It's not. I mean, you need that too, but it's really a lack of purpose, inspiration, and community. Those are the things that are missing. We couldn't get those in COVID. And so everything we do when we're doing creative innovation work has to actually infuse those things in the experience. So higher ed not designed around students, good news, we can actually all design out of this. We can actually do this work. And we all pretty much have the same problems. Most universities, we have very similar structure. Isomorphism is a good thing, right? Which means basically we mimic each other's model. So because we have basically similar design, we all have relatively similar offices, there's lots of things that are different about us, like location, modality, quality, all these things, right? But we actually have much more in common than we do different. And unfortunately, the way that higher ed works is it helps us kind of become obsessed with the boundaries of our institution instead of recognizing that we all kind of have the same problems. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is really about the things you have in common that you can work on together, that you can actually do without money to try and make change easier and better. But we have to do that because the data is showing us that we have some serious issues that need our attention. And you have to know that if design is the problem, design is behind the data because every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And so whatever thing you're being asked to deliver, whatever outcome we're trying to change, we have to start by recognizing that it was exactly designed to get the results it's getting. And so in order to change the results, we have to change our design. And I would argue that the future and the new normal, the students that we need to be serving, especially low-income first-generation students of color, adult learners, transfer students, they absolutely are going to need us to really rethink our design because the design of the past is insufficient for the task ahead. Let's first talk about who and what is happening in the new normal, which there is nothing normal about this. I totally get it. The fact that I'm doing this on Zoom and I'm inside my slides feels very new normal, right? The thing about the new normal, even though I hate that word, these students that we need to recognize that there's a shift happening with our demographics and with our students. So if we're going to meet their needs, we need to recognize it. The new normal students are older, they are poorer, they are more diverse. All that stuff is not surprising. You've heard lots of talk about adult learners lately. But the things that we need to really think about are that in the new normal, our students are expecting bite size. They are digital natives. They, frankly, are not going to be willing to go back to a non-digital experience. In some way or another, digital is part of their education. They expect it. I know that we wanted to get back to the classroom, but like, if you're worried about enrollment, thinking that we're going to get back to the old ways is a fast track to having real serious problems. The other thing you need to know about students in this moment is that they are the most sensitive to bad design of any generation. You right now can do all kinds of things and you are exposed to design thinking, right? The user-centered design, you know when something really puts you first. So like, for instance, I can pick up my phone right now, a car can pick me up and I don't have to talk to anyone and it just takes me there. I can get food delivered and it's not hot, but it comes, right? That because we know, so everywhere we go, Amazon checkout, all these things, intuitive design centering our needs, we are being exposed to it so much that this generation of students, and by generation, I mean any student, any age student right now, because they are living in America today, they are living today, they are exposed to user-centered design, which means that in the future, students are going to make decisions based on the experience. And we have to get ahead of this now by working on our design and making sure that our systems and our process actually serves our students. That it's not just like, we created a process and like, look to your left, look to your right, suck it up. That attitude just isn't going to work anymore. And so I think that's a really important piece for us. And the other part I mentioned, bite size. These students are not necessarily looking for a full meal deal. They're not looking for a full MBA. They like little courses, a badge, a certificate, a skill. And we're not comfortable with that. We think you need to be walking through the enrollment door or not at all. And we're going to have to deal with that because there is a new fluidity to the educational experience. And our students are expecting that we understand that, and we don't yet, but we're going to have to get ahead of it. The other part is that these students all have transfer credits because it's normalized to take community college classes in high school. So if your transfer student's experience is bad, it's bad for everyone. So that's just a little bit. And the other part I want to flag is that students in the new normal students we need to be thinking about, they also expect us to take equity seriously, not just like one person of color on the executive cabinet, not just a brochure that doesn't actually reflect the reality, right? Because it's 2022. They also expect that we take sustainability seriously. And if you want to be competitive, if you want to be okay in the future, this is the stuff to think about. If we open our eyes to the potential other students out there, and we don't just think an 18 to 22-year-old who is able-bodied and has money and comes from a family where everyone went to college, if we stop thinking of the stereotype of a student and we start thinking about who else it could be, people who are currently working, adult students, student parents, and you actually make sure your design works for people like that, you're going to be fine. But the institutions who think that this is just a wave, it's just a phase, they're going to be in trouble. And I need to say that you will not market your way out of this enrollment decline. In the future, students are going to make decisions based on their experience. They are going to know which institutions can help a learner like them based on their learning style. And we're not yet there, but that's where it's going. And so if you start working on this now, you are going to be ahead of the curve and you are going to be in great shape. So that is what's going on in the new normal. And it requires that we adapt and evolve some of our systems and our process. And the good news is that can be done. It doesn't take a lot of money. And it actually, if you do it right, creates community. It reminds people about their purpose and it provides inspiration. So I do want to also flag, though, that the data is indicating that we actually need to take this stuff real serious. Right now, just like for the economic competitiveness of our country, given what's going on, we absolutely need to be educating more people. We need volume, right? Not just admitting more, graduating more. That's the key. We can't keep failing half of all the people who walk in our door. We have to work on our design so it's not just, students leave and then we go out and hustle for more enrollment. It's got to be, we've got to make sure the system actually works for the ones who we've admitted. It's a promise when we admit you. We do need to also make sure that our degrees actually align with the future workforce and not the past. Those things can all happen, but I just, in general, want you to understand that this is about the economic competitiveness of our country. It's going to require that we make it that the American dream is not an illusion. And the growing sense that it's an illusion is a threat to our democracy. It is a threat to our economic competitiveness. Right now, the family you're born into and the zip code you live in, we can generally predict your life outcomes. And that is the most un-American thing, right? So the key here is higher education. And I know that, people love to talk trash about higher ed, but it is still pound for pound, dollar for dollar. It is the best way to get out of the poverty cycle and to ensure social mobility. And it is a great use of a person's investment of their time. We do have to make sure that we make some changes, but I am always going to bet on higher ed. It changed my life, changed many of yours. So just we need more of that. The second piece, though, to add context on the design piece is that for the first time in US history, low-income students are the majority in public K-12. So think about that. The vast majority of students we need to be serving, they are from a background that unfortunately we don't do very well with. Historically, higher ed, this is how well we do with low-income students. I'm the bottom line, the red one. Back in the 70s, 6 out of every 100 people got a bachelor's degree. And after all the progress and hype and, thinking about innovation, I actually have these numbers updated. It's still hovering around 10%. So we basically made no progress for low-income people, but high-income populations, we've doubled their attainment rate. So that's what we're talking about with the equity gap. And so the good news about this slide is it shows you that progress is possible, that change is possible. We just have to actually focus our energy on serving low-income students, first generation, and students of color. And I tell you that because, when we think about the attainment rate, we think about what's going on, The biggest problem we have is that we treat those students like they are like a boutique group. We bolt on a solution over in the corner for them. They are the leading indicator. And if you treat them as such, everything will get better, because they are just a student working multiple jobs, dealing with systemic racism, dealing with, student parents, or getting bad advice, they're not having any guidance. They just have that extra backpack of challenge. So if you make it so your systems and your design and your process actually works for that kind of a student, it's going to work for everyone. And your water level for everyone will rise. We've seen this happen, and we know that this is true at institutions across the country. Georgia State definitely demonstrated that by eliminating race and income as a predictor of outcome, and their entire student population's rates went up as well. So that's my plea, to focus on those students. Just to give you a sense of hope about this, though, is that these are the institutions I work with. They're spread throughout the country. They had no reason to work together, get along. They decided to team up on this issue to see if they could innovate together, and they could move more quickly by sharing and holding each other accountable on their data, by scaling up what works. And our goal is to always leave breadcrumbs so that the rest of the sector can benefit from it. It's not about us, it's about a movement. Anyway, that's all you need to know about them. It's just that it's an unlikely group that in a competitive industry shouldn't really be successful. And we've only been around for 8 years, and already we've managed to increase our graduates of color by 85%, our low-income graduates by 46%, actually, the number's off. And I just got our new updated numbers that we've added 118,000 more graduates than we were on track to in 2013 when we started. And that's not just from admitting more students, that's doing a better job with who you have. And we're like a tiny nonprofit, right? This is basically, when I describe what we do to people on the street, I describe it as like running a Weight Watchers group for universities to be good at something that they've never been good at. And so this is just to tell you that change is possible. It's not the big stuff. It's the small stuff that matters. It's how you spend your time. It's what you talk about. It's what you focus on. It's what data you look at. It's what you actually create and prioritize in terms of your calendar and how you're going to connect with colleagues and ideate. So I want to tell you that with UIA, innovation, my middle name, I thought I would talk about lasers and chatbots a lot more. Chatbots are great, but it's actually the simple stuff that's going to make a difference. So let's talk about the challenges to innovation that are getting in the way. I think that there's a lot of stuff that is an impediment that we need to really be more thoughtful about. And so the first challenge, I just want to give you a little trigger warning. It's that this is what you look like. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. This is what the burnout epidemic feels like. And when I tell you that people needing purpose, oh, sorry, he'll just keep doing that. I will pause him. So what we know is that it's people not just needing a vacation, they need actual refocusing of the work, and we need to reprioritize and redesign our work. I know that you have found that you're having a really hard time hiring people. And the issue I would flag for you is that it's not just that people are needing more money. It's actually that we have to fundamentally redesign the jobs, the position descriptions. You need a pre-COVID, post-COVID job description, and we don't have that right now. And it's super important that we actually do that. And I promise you, HR does not have innovation expertise, support, or time to do that. The best way for us to do this is to lean in and work together one by one. What was an academic advisor's position description? Now what do we need? What can be virtual? What can't? All of that stuff, it's not going to be one university at a time. I think you should pull together on that. The other piece that you should know is that this was pre-COVID what you looked like. It's unfortunately, we have always believed that if you just, we add more work to your plate, that your plate will expand. Magical thinking is adorable, but it doesn't actually work. We also have this belief system that when a new initiative comes, that we will hire a retired person back at 0.49 instead of actually staffing that work. Now, I love retirees. Some of my favorite people in the world are retired. And I love the work that people who are experienced can do. But I want you to think about this from a systemic perspective. If you have all new work for the past few decades has been kind of not really staffed or changed how we structure our org chart, then we are operating with like a 1960s org chart, and that is not sustainable. And it's part of the issue that we're running into is that we keep kind of beg, borrowing, and stealing, and not really actually creating the space for folks to be able to actually do the work. You want to get this information to your administration, you can forward them this video afterward. So the other piece I want to share is that when higher ed, when you do have a problem that you want to work on, unfortunately, this is what it's like to talk to people in higher ed sometimes because of the competitive the way, it's like a Hunger Games. So we only talk about what we've done, which is not helpful. I don't really care what you've done. I care if you've taught someone else how to do it and you've replicated it. And I want to talk to you about the things that you learned that helped make it faster and better the second time. I want to hear what problem you started with. I want to hear about the first 3 steps. But we don't talk like that. We pitch each other on the headline because this sector, our value system, has that kind of a culture, and we get to decide our value system. And I would just argue that this doesn't serve us. The last piece is I get invited to college campus all the time to inspire them and to talk about things like this. And often I will have some kind of a tour or something. And whenever I go to a new campus, it feels like when you walk into a gym and people are, well, doing this, this guy, it's like, yeah, like, I don't know why you're doing that. Best of luck, dude. You're putting a lot of effort in. So that's what I see, is that I'll stop him again because he's doing all the work for us. Is that, when I go to a campus, I find that people are, they don't, like, I'm always asking, like, why are you doing that one thing? Why that one thing first? What are you going to do after this? How are you going to measure your success? How are you going to know that you got there? And I just, like, there's so many questions. How often, what data are you using to evaluate whether you're successful? And so, you need a plan. You need time to form a plan. And the best way to do that is to actually create time for it. So I'm back inside I'm inside the internet now, and I'm just wanted to make sure my gifts don't work in the other thing. So, yeah, you need that. Those are the things that get in the way of innovation: is a lack of strategy, capacity, burnout. It's hard to do more stuff when we're all exhausted, right? And it's hard to not know what the right thing to do, because it's a sector where we're kind of polishing it up like we've got it all figured out, when really everybody has like a multi-million-dollar failure on their campus. And the longer we don't talk about those things, the more we are sentencing other people to repeat our mistakes. And students are the ones who pay those prices. So those are the problems. You've heard a little bit about the context of the work we need to do. Now we're on to the best part, which is like, here's how you do it. It's actually quite simple. Change and innovation in higher education, the real secret tool is a Post-it note. I know you thought I was going to say like a laser. This was my chance for lasers. So I just want to share something with you that is free and accessible, and something you can do no matter where you sit on the org chart. And so a Post-it note, I think I might be keeping them in business. We actually find is the most effective vehicle for change. It's got a forcing function, its size. And what I'm going to suggest is, again, think about the results of the UIA. This is where it all starts. This is where Georgia State started. All transformation work that you're really impressed by on the outside, it starts by actually seeing the system for how it is, by engaging it in a process map, which is a very basic concept I didn't come up with. It's very common. You can get trained online. You can hire consultants. You can do all kinds of, but there's someone in your institution who knows how to do this. And it's literally, you first want to engage in empathy interviews. So like the first step of design is empathy. You can't create something for people you don't talk to. You got to know what their life is. So what you're going to want to do is, say it's your department, or maybe it's a group that you want to pull together, which again, this is about community, purpose, and inspiration. So you basically say, a month from now, we're going to have 2 to 3 hours. We're going to do a process map. So between now and then, everybody's going to go talk to 5 students. And you're going to ask them if they had a magic wand and could fix any one step in their journey at our institution, what would it be? Why? Tell us about what happened. What things have been most challenging for them? What things have really been an issue? Get those and put those on a Post-it note, each one per Post-it note. You're going to come back, and the day of the event's going to come. And you're going to set some sweet jams and play some nice music. Maybe there's some snacks. And you're going to invite people to a room it's a cross-functional conversation. And you're going to everyone's going to put their Post-it notes up on the wall. Here are the things I heard about from students. Oh, major change. Onboarding. Boy, they get overwhelmed by emails. Oh, financial aid holds. The transfer process was terrible. They haven't met with an advisor. I heard this story. Great. So now people are starting to get engaged. They're feeling like, okay, we literally care about students because we were once students, and we are going to go in and actually learn from them. And now we're bringing back the actual experience, the lived experience. So empathy, good. Anyone can do it. Just go out, bring those back in. So now, but you're putting these up on the wall. You're putting them up one by one. Boop, boop, boop. You're going to start seeing very clearly some coalescence. And you will find one process, just one. It's just your first. You can take a picture of all the other ones because you're going to need them for later. But the first process map, you're just going to pick one process. And now this is later. You're going to schedule that you're going to have these process mapping session. Let's say we pick, financial aid holds. Okay, so everyone who touches those, anyone who can issue a financial aid hold, or maybe the financial aid office or the registrar and the people who have to implement them. Those are the folks who are going to be invited, cross-functional, invite everybody in. And now we're going to just pick a very specific thing, pick one hold, and we're going to map it out. What do we think happens to the student? We put the hold in their account. How do they find out? How do we expect them to reconcile it? What other things does it stop them from doing? Okay, and then actually let's map how many financial aid holds we have, right? Just start with one process. It doesn't have to be perfect. But while you were in that room, magic will happen. One, everyone came in there having conversations with students and learning about things that were concerning. They want to help these students. And two is that they actually will, they're starting to learn and see the process for how it really is and not our fantasy of what it is. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And three, everybody's in the room. You're getting buy-in immediately. We now know what's going on. We're not going to make this up. And so as a result, change can actually happen in that room. We know this, we've seen this many times where it's like, oh, I don't have access to that data. Send me your email address, or I'm going to send this to you. My department has that. I know how to fix those things, or that's actually something I have control over. There's going to be low-hanging fruit from that day that you see in the room. And then you have whoever's in charge of that unit, maybe it's the president, provost, they're not in the room otherwise. They come in at the end, whoever the leader is, come in at the end and they ask, what did we learn? Not what did we do wrong? Not what are we screwing up? What did we learn? And you just watch the magic happen because people are now engaged. They've just done this thing together. It's been collaborative. They see things that they didn't realize. I thought the process was so simple and easy. Oh my gosh. And that activation, that is purpose. They are just having community. And now they also have solved a problem. And it's inspiring because it's like, oh man, we are a learning organization. We're not just a place that when I find a problem, I have to ask, can I actually fix this? I don't have time. Problems aren't a bad thing. Problems are a good thing. They're an invitation to bring people together to actually work on your design. So you do this process map. You do it slowly over time, every 3 months, bring people together. And it should feel good so people actually want to come, because the sweet jams, the snacks, and the collegiality and the fact that, hey, we're going to actually fix something. And what you're going to do is you're going to shift morale significantly, because it reminds people of why they do this work. It feels good. It's empowering. It's exciting. And you also have your system slowly being redesigned around the needs of the student. I want to tell you that it's more complicated than that, but it isn't. We know this to be true. We've seen this happen. Here's an example. This is what Michigan State did. They gathered everyone in the room to try and map out just the first 3 months from when a student gets admitted to the day they show up on campus. And what they found was, they got everyone in the room together. They played the sweet jams. They had some snacks, and it was super cross-functional. And they said, okay, so here's all these different places where things are expected for those 3 months. And at the end of that day, what they found was that there were 450 Post-it notes in the place where they had emails. And there were 50 where there were financial aid holds that they didn't know about. So what that told them was they send 450 emails to every student. which if you're a first generation student, that basically says, good luck, we're not going to help you. We are overwhelming them. We are inundating them. We don't have any traffic cop for communication. We've ruined email. We've ruined Facebook. We'll ruin it all if we don't actually be intentional about it. But they also, like I said, they found 50 holds the institution was putting on students' accounts that the university didn't know. So the students didn't know, obviously. They were running into them. The institution didn't even know those were holds. That is how you can drive change immediately. Everyone in that room heard that. Everyone in that room saw that. The biggest waste of your time right now is that you're spending a lot of time trying to convince your peers about what the right work is. This is how you actually expedite that, because everybody's in the room together. They all saw it. And it creates a real energy that is very validating, and it's affirming for people. So that's the easy, cheap, like that is literally how you do this work. And you want to make sure that you're talking to low income, first generation and students of color about their experience, to be bringing it back, so that we just keep adding more processes. And remember, every time you find a problematic process, it's a chance to bring people together, to create community, to build consensus, to invigorate them. The other things I want to do before I leave is I want to make sure to arm you with the questions that the most innovative places ask themselves. And you bring these back to your team and you think about them, and it's going to create a generative discussion that will help you think about what needs to happen. The first question you need to be asking is, how do you treat new ideas? You need first off, where are new ideas coming from? What door? Is it because that team goes on a retreat? Is it because so-and-so went to a conference? If you don't know where new ideas are being generated, you don't get more of them. That's number one. Number two, though, this is the most important. You got to figure out how you're going to treat new ideas. If every time a new initiative comes in, people have to start from scratch, you're not going to get a lot going. New ideas are going to be something it's going to be too difficult. One example of a process to support new ideas is at Arizona State. Michael Crow's had an office called University Initiatives. Their job, it's early to mid-career professionals who are like fellows. Their only job is to basically prototype and ideate and build whatever random idea he has, and get it ready to go out into the institution. And he doesn't have to ask himself what lane his good ideas come in. Lots of other presidents have new ideas, but they have to ask themselves which slot it fits in. Is this government relations? Is it communications? Where can I get some help? How does your institution think about and treat new ideas? Do you debate new ideas, or do you say yes and ideate? You need a process, and you need to be intentional about it. So that's number one. The second question that you need to know is really, how are you going to talk about failure? There is, the most innovative places have a autopsy process. Like I said, you have $1 million failure at least on your campus. Think about the last thing that went wrong. Man, we all have those one things. Implementation that failed. We thought we were going to change from semesters to quarters. We did all this work. So much work has been done, and it didn't work out. That's fine. Failure's normal. It's the only way that you can get better. But did you ever talk about it? Did you talk about the strategy and the process? Did you ever think about what went wrong and maybe how you prevent it from happening in the future? I know too many people who have really, huge process they want to create for students, never talk to a student. That's our norm. So you need a way to unpack and talk about failure that's safe socially. And that is not, hey, how'd you fail? It's, what'd you learn? What do you wish you'd known before you started? If you could do it over, what would you change? How do we support ideas in a way that makes it so that was more likely? The failure is the best teacher, but we're like the one sector that pretends like we don't do it. And so that's not, we need all the smart people to work together. And this is literally, we know that all the progress that's happened in society, typically there was failure necessary, right? I'm just saying that this is the essential piece, is you need an autopsy process. The third piece that I want to flag as I wrap is that you need to think about your habits. Whatever goal or objective you're being asked to deliver, whatever big change needs to happen, you need to ask yourself, if we were the kinds of people who did that, what kinds of habits would we have that supported it? What kind of data would you look at? How often would you look at it? What kinds of meetings would you have? What kind of conversations? How often would you strategize about it? How often would you have failure sharing sessions? If you were going to be successful, what would you do? And then actually think about the habits. We have all kinds of habits. You have commencement. We just had that, right? There are habits of celebration. A habit for a university or a complex bureaucracy is a process. And if we don't think about and build the kinds of intentional habits that support learning from failure and ideating and supporting new ideas, we're never going to be able to make the changes necessary to support our students now or in the future. And unfortunately, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And systems are habits. So we have to think about how we're going to support creativity and innovation. And we have to do it in a way that actually infuses us with energy and momentum and community. And so these are the things that actually work. They don't take a ton of money. I do want you to have extra time. I want you to be able to cancel meetings, because I know that that's actually what you need, is a meeting without an agenda. But I do hope that today I've been able to give you a little bit of perspective that change is actually easier than we thought, that it's within grasp. And I hope that these questions and the idea of process mapping and the example from the Alliance has been useful to you, because we need to serve millions more people so that the family you're born into and the neighborhood you grew up in is no longer something that determines your life's outcomes. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I will hang out inside my slide as long as you need me to.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Burns. Scanning the chat here, it looks like we didn't have too many questions. We do have you for a few more minutes if there are any last minute posts.
I did see the thing about how old higher ed is. I was just going to say, yes, we're older than the church. Like in higher education, resistance to change is a feature, not a bug. And it's literally, we were designed to last, not to change. And so the fact that change is hard in higher ed is, it's a part of the reason why we last. So it's like a dance you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and a great question just came in from Joe. How do we get leadership to make more time for all of this to happen?
Well, you can share this talk. I think Watermark is going to send you a copy, so you can. I would, fast forward to the end part where it's like, here's actually what the most. The nice thing is the competitive industry, and I work with the biggest innovators in the land. So, I'm just telling you, this is the playbook. This is the kind of stuff you need to be thinking about and doing. And if you want to position your institution for the future, this is the right stuff. But I think just know that your leaders also have the same problem. The reason why they aren't prioritizing differently is because they're also just, it's literally firefighting. When I was an ACE fellow at Arizona State, I shadowed Michael Crow for a year. I thought I had a sense of the job. And because I'd been a chief of staff for a university system and hired presidents, and no, I had no idea. It was starting at 6:30 in the morning. He was scheduled in 15 to 30-minute increments until about 9 p.m. at night. And like first thing in the morning, it was text messages about some crisis on campus, some article that was coming out, something terrible had happened to a student or a faculty member. There was a new budget cut looming, all these things. And that was just text. He didn't even check his email yet. He hadn't even had and he was booked back to back after that. And so you have to understand that when we're talking to leadership, it's not about saying the same thing. You have to change how you talk to leadership. They don't want to hear about your problem. They don't want you to just hand it to them like on a backpack. What they want is for you to say, I identified a problem. I figured out who else has had this problem. I asked them what other ideas they considered to solve it, what choice they actually made, how much it cost. And now I look at our own institution where we are and what's going on and what we can afford and the capacity. And my recommendation is 1. And if you're going to do number 1, here's the team. And here's probably the first step that would help. If you start briefing your president like that, instead of, hey, we have a problem with blah, 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 you're going to get the kinds of things you need. It's the way that we communicate with them is just contributing to the overwhelm, and it makes it impossible for them to actually feel confident that we're moving in the right direction or we've asked the right questions. So lead with the questions you've already interrogated, and I guarantee you whatever problem you have, it's not new, and especially around time overwhelm.